What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the podcast. On this episode of the podcast, we are going to look at managing pain cycles. And the reason being is that I have the back pain back to exercise group going at the minute, and this is a question that I got. She sent in from a lady who is progressing so well, and one thing that she's kind of gotten it down to now, she's really recognised, is that her pain is kicking up from between 10 a.m. in the morning and 2 p.m. And it's very consistently happening at those times every day. And she was wondering, is there anything, now that she has kind of recognised that pattern, is there anything that she can do to improve it and how to fix it? So I said I better do a podcast on it, as well as obviously I answered the question for them. We went into a lot of detail, and I thought that it'd be an interesting one to follow up with the podcast about, first off, understanding pain patterns, understanding pain cycles, how they can happen to you. It doesn't have to be specifically for like a recurring back pain. The idea of a pain cycle is still the same as if you have an ongoing trap injury or issue, or a shoulder issue or a neck issue, or even the fact if you have like a knee or a hip problem, one that crops up every once in a while, and it's the same for you have arthritis, or you could be looking at more of like a chronic neurological issue as well. So if we can understand the pain cycles better, we can fix them, and that's the main aim of this podcast, I guess, is to help you to recognize that there's more going on to these than what you may feel. And if you can start to get a better understanding and better idea of that, then we can start to improve it. So to look at the first thing, I want to look at it in a problem versus solution basis before we look at like an action plan on how to fix it. And some of the main problems that I run into with this is that, first off, with pain cycles, people don't even realize that they happen. This is the I was going to say the crazy thing, but it's not crazy. It happens to me myself, and I wouldn't even realize it. I don't even realize it till I'm come out the other end of it, and I'm like, oh, that injury kicked up there for no reason, and now it's gone. So that it wasn't actually the injury, it was more of like a pain issue or a neurological issue was kicking up, and then it disappears. So I think the first thing is that people don't know that it even happens to them. They feel that every time they have pain that they have an injury, but we have to realize that we can get pain without an injury, and that's really, really important. That's kind of the basis of these pain cycles, is that it's a deeper issue. It's more of a neurological issue that flares and then starts to calm down again. Now, you can look at it the same as if you have a tendinopathy, or if you have, let's say, torn a hamstring. You can apply these principles to it as well, and it'll give you a better understanding of how to work around that, because you can kind of see where your tolerance is, test it, pull back, recuperate, and go again. And but that's easy with an acute injury, because there's a lot less of a conscious input for acute injury as there is for a chronic injury. A chronic injury, there's a lot of psychological input. There's a lot of our conscious, what we think, our fears, our beliefs, what's going on around us, the people around us, our environment, all of these other factors that will actually contribute to us having more pain for longer, and having us causing a flare-up to literally happen in the first place. But if we don't know when it kicks up, or if we don't know that can happen, then we're kind of shooting in the dark. We don't really know what to fix then. So the first one is understanding that it can happen, that you can have pain cycles. It can happen at a certain time of the day, the month, the year. It can happen around certain people, but I'll talk about all that. And then the second thing is not knowing when it actually happens. So first off, not knowing that it can happen, that we can get a cycle of pain. And the second one then is not knowing when it happens. And this takes a little more reflection. This takes time to look back on the injuries and issues that you've been dealing with over a longer time frame. Have a good understanding of all the things around it. This is a huge part of the back pain back to exercise course, is at the start of it is understanding what's going on around us, so we can see how that contributes to us on a day-to-day. And there is a reflection component in there where we jot down notes about, okay, well, I'm noticing that on a Friday at 2 p.m. it's starting to kick up, or on a Thursday at 3 p.m. it's starting to kick up. Or every time I go to train and it kicks up the next day after it, or it kicks up for 2 days after it. It's kind of noticing these little patterns and then starting to fix them. And once you start to do that, you can isolate things, work on it, and improve it. So first off, not knowing that it actually happens. Second, not understanding when it kicks up. The other ones then is like not actually recognizing any pattern. Okay, do I notice if I go to this club that I get pain? Or do I notice on a Thursday evening before a dance class I start to get pain? Or do I notice that once I drop the kids off to school, when I'm at home, I start to get a lot more issues and I start to get a lot more pain? And this is where you're looking at the patterns of, okay, well, how does it, like, is it related to something that I'm doing? Like a very simple one would be like, okay, I go down to training on a Friday night, I do a run around, and then at a 40-minute mark, once we start the sprints and training, I start to get a lot more pain in my hamstring, so I pull out. Okay, so there you kind of have an understanding of where it's happening, why it's happening, when it's happening, and as well as a pattern associated with it. So they're the first couple of ones. And then when you don't realize these things, when you don't understand that there can be a pattern to them, you never really know if it's improving or not, because what you're basing it off of is, I have pain now and I don't have pain tomorrow. Okay, so it's like, well, that's good, because then it goes to the back of your mind and you forget about it, and then this continues to increase. So one time it might be I only get pain on a Monday, Tuesday, and now I'm getting pain on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and it continues to build and build and build to the case that you're having pain all day and every day. So when you know the pain cycles and when you start to understand them, then you can see, well, if it is improving or if it's disimproving, and that's huge as well. And then the next one then is recall on pain is poor. When we think back on pain that we've had in the past, we often feel that it's a lot worse than what it was at the time, because we have this negative remembering bias often when it comes to pain. And if that is the case, you will take bigger measures to get rid of the pain in future, and you'll kind of have these preset ideas, which in turn, because pain is a perception as well, there's a huge part of pain that's a perception of pain, we can get more pain in future because of the negative remembering bias of what we had in past. Now that might be difficult for people to understand, and I understand that can be a bit of a challenge, but the whole, I guess in simpler terms, is that because your perception of the pain that you're feeling is really bad, you start to take measures like, okay, well, I need to go to a consultant the next time the pain kicks up, and I need to go and get a surgery the next time it kicks up. And that negative remembering bias can dictate our actions in future, where you say, okay, well, I'm going to get a lot of painkillers, and when I notice it kicking up at the start, I'm going to take those painkillers. And then after that, you take the painkillers when you notice the pain starts to kick up. But now the pain lasts 2 weeks when before it only lasted 3 days, because you're constantly masking it and not actually taking care of the issues that are contributing to it. So the recall is actually of understanding, okay, why it happened, when it happened, where it happened, can be poor if we don't make a conscious effort of trying to recognize the pain. And once that's the case, then it actually becomes harder to set goals and objectives around what to improve. So when you know, as we said with the training example, I go down training at the 40-minute mark, it starts to kick up. Well, then we look at the 10 minutes before, the 10 minutes after, and we look at how we can manage our training around that a bit better. And our goals and objectives become so much easier, as opposed to you just saying, okay, I want you to do these 4 bird dog, I want you to do bird dog, cat cow, dead bug, and some type of a squat, let's say. I want you to do these all for the next 6 weeks, and I want you to do 3x10. Like, that's great, but that's not going to work after a while, because you're going to build up a tolerance to that, and it won't become an issue after it. So it becomes a lot harder to set your goals when you have no measurements or no basis of why it's actually kicking up. Okay, so that's it. They're the problems. Okay, so they're the main ones. You're not knowing when it kicks up, don't recognize the patterns, not actually knowing that it's a thing in the first place, that you can get these cycles, never knowing that if it's improving or not. Your recall is very poor on the pain, where you start to overemphasize how bad it was at certain stages and underemphasize how bad it was at other stages. You don't then also, your recall can be poor in that, okay, I could say to you, well, were you emotional at the time? I had this recently. I said to a lady, how are your emotions at the time? And she said, no, not emotional at all. I'm actually pretty straight. And I said, all right, okay, Grant. And we went on and kept on going on then. And a couple of minutes later in the conversation, it came up that literally to the day that she got a lot of pain was around the time that she broke up with her boyfriend. Like, that's a pretty emotional time, I would expect. But see, our recall it can be poor on that type of thing. So we don't remember, okay, well, there was actually a breakup associated with this. And the amount of pain that's driven emotionally is crazy. It's crazy how much our emotions can actually drive the pain that we feel on day to day. It really, really impacts us. But if we can't remember that, then it becomes really challenging. Because, like, in this case, only the fact that it came up later on, where I was like, what were you doing on Wednesday? And she was like, oh, I had to do this because whenever we had a breakup. But before that, there was nothing mentioned about the emotional side, even though it was directly asked, even though I had directly said, are you dealing with any emotional issues at the moment? it wasn't highlighted. And then afterwards I was like, do you think that's possibly an emotional? She's like, I guess so, yeah. It is an emotional issue. So that's what I mean with recall. Our recall can be shite at sometimes. Like, I hardly remember what I ate for breakfast yesterday. Only that I eat an omelette every day, it becomes a bit easier. But looking at, like, I was only talking to a friend about what did we do last Saturday, and Jesus, that's a challenge. So how could you remember 6 months ago, 12 months ago, what your pain was like, what it was kicking up and what you were doing? That's an even bigger challenge. So the recall, it can be a lot worse than what we expect it to be. And it's like when you recall a situation to be worse than it was, not a pain situation, now another situation, or something to be way better than it was. And in those cases, yeah, that's can be a bit of a problem. Now, that's enough on the problem side of things. Let us look at the solutions, because I want you to go away with clear tactics and strategies that you can use to improve this going forward. And I'm going to add in a few of the things that we talked about as well in the Back Pain Back to Exercise group. And just for anyone, a quick point is that we will be opening up again in March. I'm going to run an early bird special pretty soon, so keep an eye on that. For anyone who got an email, I put out an email this week with a special discount code, and it's going to work for, I think it's 10 people it's set for. So if anyone's interested, you can take advantage of that discount code right now. But you have to be on the email list. So to get on the email list, go and click in the link in the bio, Understanding the Root Cause of Chronic Back Pain, download that free guide, and you'll be straight into the email list. And it's actually going to follow up with a couple of emails about understanding the emotional side of it. Really short emails, but will give you a clear idea of why they're contributing and what is contributing. So they're the first ones. Now, to continue into the solution side of things, let's look at that. Let's dive into it. First off, the very first thing is you have to start to reflect on the pain you've experienced in good time. Like, it might be worth doing it now for the 12 months before, even though you know that it's going to be not exactly accurate for the 12 months before, but at least you'll have a better idea of, okay, well, I know you might be able to connect it to events. Let's say I know when my sister was getting married last year, I knew that my back was starting to flare up the couple of weeks before it. Okay, so you know that was in May or June or whatever it was, and you can start to pick out that date. Or I know when it came championship that my knee started to give me problems. All right, so then you know around you can start to piece things together there a little more. Training had increased and all that, and then you can say, okay, well, what else could be contributing to it? A really simple one, all right, to reflect on pain, and I'll talk about this, is there is patterns. Can you pick up on patterns associated with it? Like, is there a time of the day that it kicks up? As I was saying, that lady was able to pick up 10 to 2, and it was every day during the week that it caused to happen. So there's something going on there between 10 and 2, whether that be her activity drops, whether she becomes more emotional about certain things, whether it becomes like, okay, right, she has a load of jobs to do, she's dropped the kids off at work, and now she's a load of things to get done around the house. There's many more factors in that we need to dive into, and there's no point me throwing them all in the first week and saying, look at all these things. It's slowly but surely isolating them, picking them out and improving them. Time of the day, month or year is huge. You'll often see with women that you're going to have a lot more pain around your menstrual cycle. That's obviously, you can pick that out yourself, I'm pretty sure. That's a common one. A really interesting one, accountants. Accountants are more likely, that I've noticed, the ones that work with me, to have it at the end of the month or the end of the year, where things are due more. That's a simple one. I find that when I've been working with teachers, that it's been like end of the summer or in January, you'll get it a lot, that teachers, January, February, that they will notice that they get a lot more pain, whether that's just because they're getting back to work or whatever it is to do with it. That's one I've noticed. February is a big month. I know it's February right now. February is a big month that people get a lot more pain, and it is a good time to start to go after it. When you have more pain, it's the best time to go after it. Well, there's no best time, it's always a good time, but you can learn a lot more from it straight away when you have a lot more pain. And in February, people seem to get a lot more pain, whether that's just because of, I don't know, the SADS, SADS, where it's like seasonal depression. That's what it is. I was trying to think of it for a second. Where you get seasonal depression in February because of the shorter days or whatever it is. But I find that February people often kick it up, or it kicks up for people a lot more. And in certain environments, like in work environments, people will notice that their pain kicks up. This is a huge one that we don't realize, that when you're in an environment that there's a lot of conflict, that you don't like people, that you maybe have someone in there that you don't get on with, or your boss, you don't enjoy them being around, you can often see that your pain will kick up a lot more. And on the days that they're not in, the pain might drop off a small bit. And that's often to do with the conflict in work. So that's more of an emotional, psychological driver in your pain as opposed to a physical. Well, another environment is, as we were talking about, someone who goes down to play football and then they notice that at the 40-minute mark it starts to kick up. Well, that's more of a physical contributor where the tolerance probably just isn't where it should be. What's up, guys? Robbie here. I hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. I want to take a moment just to personally ask you for your help. If you're enjoying the podcast, would you be willing to share it with someone you think would love it too? Maybe a friend, family member on social media, or even if you just brought it up in conversation with someone you know. The recommendation means the world to us, and it's because of people like you that we get to be able to produce this podcast on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for your support so far, and I would love if you could help us reach even more people who could benefit from it too. Really appreciate you, and we're going to jump straight back to the podcast. And now there's different ways of dealing with different ones, but it's important to understand that there is different factors contributing to it. And that's why I said if you don't know this can happen, it becomes a problem, because then you don't know what to fix. And you start to just go from one thing to the next, looking for all these physical solutions. And now you're getting a surgery, you're out for 6 months, 8 months or whatever. A lot of people gain weight because they can't train or they can't do anything. Their life then, because obviously they're not active and stuff, you find they have a lot of psychological or a little mental health, you could say, issues because of it, just because they're out of it and they're trying to get back into it. So to avoid all of that, it's important to get a good understanding of it. And I do emphasize that a lot, is that like we want to, if we can, avoid the surgery just because of the cost, the time and the effect on the body. And often they're completely unnecessary and they're just the last cause, and you're just throwing it and saying, help me with this. When nobody has told you before that it's actually to do with your nervous system sensitivity and the pain sensitivity in your nervous system. And getting a surgery, even though because you've had a scan and it said that, okay, I have bulging discs, or I have a rotator cuff injury, or I have meniscus tear, oftentimes those exact same results, and when I say oftentimes, I've done a podcast on this, very often, like 40 to 50% of the time you could say, are going to show up on people's scans who have no pain. So even if they went in and just got an MRI for the crack, they have a meniscal tear. They haven't even realized because they haven't had any pain. So it doesn't make it, I won't say it doesn't make a difference, but generally there's very little to do with it. And I put up a post on that during the week on Instagram as well, at the Mobility Shooter, for those of you who want to see that, because there is a lot more to it, and I've done podcasts on it in the past. Check it out. Sham surgeries versus real surgeries, where they do podcasts on people. They fake the surgery and then they actually did a real surgery on another group. So one group they fake it, the other group they did a real one, and it's the exact same results after 6 to 12 months, which is ludicrous to think about. How I don't even see why those surgeries should be warranted if that's the case. But it's just because of lack of education, and people don't understand that there's other factors contributing to the pain and why they get a lot more pain on certain days. And that's why we're talking about this. That's why we're doing this managing pain cycles. So as I said, you need to pick patterns associated with it, environments, people, events. Is it exercise related? Is there time of the day, time of the month, time of the year? And then you have to reassess, why is it worse around those times? As I said, is it somebody that pisses you off in work and that you don't want to meet? Is it because that you're trying to get back into training but you're upping it too fast and you keep getting injured as you get back into it? Or is it because once you drop the kids off to school and you're at home and you start to get this, when the kids are there, you feel like, okay, I know what I have to do. And then when you get home, all these new tasks come into your head and you start to get overwhelmed. And now you're having trouble deciding what's the most important, what's the biggest priority. And you nearly stress yourself into this pain, or make yourself more emotional, when you could try to get out and exercise and like clear your head, write down, make a little to-do list, different things like that. I've seen them so many different ways now that these are just ones that I've dealt with in the past and they crop up to mind. So I'm not just spitballing here. These are all cases that I've dealt with in the past, and they're interesting because oftentimes it's something small, and then once you fix that, you start to build a lot more momentum. But otherwise, when you don't fix the little thing, you're still, as I was saying there, like with the idea of prioritizing things at home, you're fighting an uphill battle, because then you're trying to fix all these other factors when it's just one little kind of, like, say, psychological thing that needs to be changed or reframed. Like, reframing is a really powerful tool. And I won't talk about that in this podcast as much, because this is more about understanding and managing the pain cycles, but reframing is a massive one when it comes to pain, because pain, as I said, there's a huge aspect of pain that's a perception as well. Now, reassess why it's worse. If you don't know what the contributing factors are to your pain, it's much harder to assess it, and it's way easier to assess things in hindsight, where that idea of hindsight is 2020. When we look back on things and we say, okay, how were they? Like, how was it? When did it kick up? What issues was I dealing with? What was I dealing with? You'll notice that, hindsight is 2020, and it's much easier to reflect on things gone by and pick out the main factors and fix them, as opposed to trying to fix them in the moment. And then you'll be more prepared the next time it crops up. Now, other than that, then, if you have a good understanding on what works or what fixes, then you can fix it. If you have a good understanding of what's contributing, then you can fix it, I should say. So now you have to start to work on it. For the lady in the back pain back to exercise group, one of the really simple goals that I gave her was, okay, it kicks up from 10 to 2. So now I want you to see how you can get it to kick up from 10 to 1. All right. And you might be like, that was silly, Robbie. That's just stupid information to give someone. You're not helping them at all there. But there's actually a deeper reason that I say that. It sounds really simple, but it's actually a really powerful way of looking at it. Because now you're not trying to get rid of the pain completely, where you're like, okay, I need to do one thing that's going to fix it all, and I have to do 10 things or make up a new routine that fixes it all. No, it's not. Oftentimes, the thing that's going to bring us back to 1 p.m. is the same thing that's going to get rid of it completely. But if we focus too much on trying to get rid of it completely, that can become overwhelming, because that takes too much time. That's going to take a couple of weeks. But if you do the same thing consistently, that brings it back to 1 p.m. and now you feel better, you'll often find that will, if done consistently and made a little tweaks here and there, will be actually the key to getting rid of it altogether. But people don't think that way, because they want quick fixes. They want to be out of it now. But that's not the case. You didn't just get this chronic issue that cropped up and now you have it for the last 6 years. That didn't just happen overnight. That has been building and building and building. And there's things that you've done and reactions that you've had and treatments you've tried and all these fears that you've had and beliefs that you've been given, let's say, as opposed to beliefs that other people have given to you based off of what they've experienced, that it's going to take a while to break all those. And while we're breaking those and while we're improving those, all we want to see is like a tiny bit of an improvement each day or each week on the pain that you're feeling. That's all. And trying to get people to focus on everything, it just becomes too difficult. Oftentimes it's consistency in the little things, make little tweaks, and you'll see that it'll improve. Focusing on getting rid of it completely, as I said, is overwhelming. You can then go bring it back to 1 o'clock and then you'll say, well, I need to buy a massage gun because that's going to help me, or I need to try out this new shiitake mat, or I need to go and get a massage. You'll do different things, or dry needling, or I need to get a scan in the time, instead of just saying, well, I've actually improved it by an hour, which is 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, which is 5 hours. So I've had a 20% improvement on my pain. But people don't often look at that because they still have the pain. So it's like, I haven't had any improvement. But it's 20% improvement. That's a lot. So if we can continue to do that, we can continue to make gains. But yeah, so that's what it is. Focusing on getting rid of it completely, it's challenging. So it's a little 1% everyday improvement that we're looking for. And that's something that I often say in the group. And it's just that what we can do this week so it's a little bit better next week. What we can do today so it's a little bit better tomorrow. And just taking that mindset, you'll find that you'll get back into exercise and everything will improve around it. And you won't be too focused on the big goal at the end. In the case of the ideas that are suggested, one of them was actually to work on the mobility exercises. So I said to her, okay, let's say we want to bring it back from 10 to 2 to 10 to 1. I want you to look at the mobility exercises that I've given you in the course, and I want you to try to squeeze them in around that time, where you can use that as a way of calming the nervous system and improving the pain. And I don't care what time you do it at. If you do it at 1 o'clock, or if you do it at 12, or if you do it at 9, or if you do it at 10, but just make sure to do it before or during the time, because doing it after, you're not going to affect it as much. It might improve it tomorrow, but I want to see if it has an immediate effect on it. And doing it during the time can have an immediate effect on it. So that was a really simple one. You can also combine that then with the breathing exercises to get more out of it, or a walk, or even just one of them, or you do breathing by itself, or you do a walk by itself, or you do mobility by itself. But if you find something that reduces your pain even a little bit, there's gold in that. And when you find gold, keep digging. So keep going after that. Instead of chopping and changing and looking for the next new thing and the next gadget, find out why that has helped you and then keep digging into it. Is it a short-term benefit or is it a long-term benefit? Does it just help you for an extra half an hour or an hour, or does it actually help for the next day? And is it better a day or 2 days later? Again, you're looking for those longer-term benefits. And as I said, instead of looking for the next best thing, just keep digging deeper on that one specific thing that works and see what you can do. When you're doing the mobility exercises and you combine the breathing with it, is there certain ones that impact it more than others? Is it just the whole globalization of doing all the movements together that helps? Or is it, if you focus on a very specific thoracic rotation, does that actually help? Or if you focus on finding the point of discomfort, exhaling and pushing into it, does that help you more? So that's where it comes down to the more specifics, but in time we're going to get to that. Right now, I just wanted to drop it off by 1 hour, and that's a 20% improvement on our pain. I hope the math is right on that. But yeah, to be honest, that's all I really want to talk about today. I wanted to talk about managing the pain cycles. I wanted to talk about how you can do it yourself, what tactics you can use to improve them. And once you start to actually improve them, instead of chopping and changing and looking for the next thing to improve it even more, you keep digging down. You go all in and you improve that and stay consistent as you can with that until you find that it's not improving anymore. And that might take 6 to 8 weeks before you notice that it doesn't improve anymore and that you need to change something up. But doing it for a couple of days and then saying, oh, it didn't work for me, that's silly. Hopefully that helps you all. Right now, as I said, the back pain back to exercise group is closed. It's going to be open up again in March, mid-March, for the next people who want to join. I'm going to leave a link here in the description for those of you who want to download it. You can get the course right now and then we kick off in March. So if you do buy it at the moment, you're going to find that you can go through all the educational content, and then when things do kick off, you'll get straight away, you get put into the group. So I'll add the link to the description of this podcast. You can check it out. If you want to get started on it right away, perfect. And if you have any questions, you can just email me at info@themobilitytutor.com or themobilitytutor on Instagram. Join that email list as well, understanding root cause of chronic back pain, because I'm sure I will have another special offer where at some stage. Right now the price is $297, but depending on how many people jump in, then the price might increase. So definitely get on that early while it's still an option. And for everybody else, thank you again for listening. I really, really appreciate you signing in each week to listen to this, and I would love if you could please share it with your friend, or even just add a rating on Spotify. It goes a long way in promoting the podcast, and yeah, it's a massive favor. I would love if you could do that. Thank you again. If not, there's no problem. Let me know if you have any questions at all, and that's all for me. I'll chat to you all again soon. Have a good one. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and rehab programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you will find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.